We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today.
Hush now, city kids, gather round for urban myths. Hush now, city kids. When it came to me after so long, I didn't have no choices in the streets where I was from. When I think about the pain, I didn't have no choices. I took what I had sworn. Hush now, city kids, gather round for urban myths. Hush now, city kids.
Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith, and it is Geordies here, Geordies there, the weeks fly by, Al Walid's here, Steve's here, Kevin, George, Stu and Mitch. Good evening, lads.
Hello, everybody.
Good to see you all, and we have an international break. God, I can't stand them. I really can't. It really gets you. I guess you get halfway through the first week, it's a nightmare. And for me personally, I would limit them. I would limit them because it certainly causes an issue for a team when they're doing as well as Newcastle United are at the minute. And a week ago, Al Walid, we were reveling in PSG, the result. This was the week that was, and we were doing well in the Champions League, beating PSG 4-1. We've had time to reflect on all that now. We've had a league game though since then. We've been to West Ham. So I just want to touch on the West Ham game with you, Al Walid. What did you make of it? What did you make of the score? Was there a bit of tiredness in the legs, Al Walid?
Hello, everyone. Actually, I'm still happy about the PSG game. I'm still buzzed about it. For West Ham, if you consider it's in London and West Ham, they have good side. David Moyes, expert, and he have long time spent with the team. We still didn't reach a level that we can beat every team, every game. So I'm not sad about this draw. It wasn't a lose. I'm sure there is Eddie Howe. He still have depend on almost 85% of the players. So of course they will be exhausted after all. I'm happy that become in the table of Champions League number 1. This give confidence for the team, and we were close. We were close of winning on West Ham. It was 2-1 until last 2 minutes. I guess the team was in West Ham maybe put 100%, but I think Newcastle tried to put 100%. But maybe the effort done and being exhausted make you sometimes in last 10 minutes of the game, you feel unfocused because you are exhausted. But at the end, it's a draw outside of Newcastle, so this is acceptable for me.
Okay, Steve, your take on that 2-2 at the weekend. Tough place to go. West Ham, won a trophy last year, and they've got off to a decent start this year.
They have, yeah. I mean, I think the one thing we couldn't do was underestimate West Ham. You're right; they've had a really good start. I think last season they got caught up in that sort of the Conference League situation, and that really deflected them, and it affected their league position for long stretches of the season. But they've come out the blocks this season, playing very decent football. So for that, I think, a 2-2 draw was probably, a fair result overall. It could have been 3-1 if Isak had put that ball away in the 72nd minute where he hit the post. And I think if he had, the game would have been dead and buried, to be perfectly honest. It's interesting, though. We've turned, haven't we, from the proverbial fast starters to slow starters. We're playing a bit more of a containment game in the first 15 minutes. And I think also, if you look at the records, those who follow the stats said that if the games had been ending this season over 80 minutes, then we would have been sitting top of the league. So it's interesting that slow start and then back end letting goal in the dying minutes. But after the, it wasn't really a case of after the Lord Mayor's parade, was it? I thought we played decent football. I thought we were well on top without actually doing anything with the ball in the first 15 until they scored. And then I thought we dominated possession for long stretches after that. And then, as the record showed, we did actually dominate possession. I think we had 65%. So came away from London with a point, and that's a positive. That's the way we've got to look at it. Didn't risk any of the players that were hovering around the treatment table. Brought Wilson on towards the end. Didn't risk Joe Linton, give him another extra couple of weeks to recover. So all in all, well managed point for Eddie Howe.
Yeah, you're nodding your head, Kev. You're obviously in agreement. And I mean, gone are the days really when we used to go to London and come back with nothing.
Exactly, and it was more of a mental fatigue type of game. The emotion of the Champions League win over PSG, and then going down to a difficult place into the London Stadium is always not the best place to go after. The exhilaration of it all. But I thought we were a little bit sloppy in the first half. Yes, we had all the possession in the world, but a little bit sloppy mentally, which I think Eddie Howe banged on the drum about being mentally focused and physically focused. I think physically we were fine, but until the latter stages. But again, like we've always said, a point away from home in the Premier League is a brilliant performance away from home in the Premier League. Again, it's unfortunately the Bruce adage of points are points, and you grow, or if it's 3-1, then you can get up that table. But thinking back of it now, I think that you got to look at I call him Captain Fantastic as a little side note to him, but Captain Fantastic, I know people like him on the show and others do as well, but I thought he was poor for the first goal, just from how I seen it, and I thought Tonali was poor for the second. I think, but again, that it's mental decisions, mental frailties what he had, not tiredness physically. It's just getting drawn into areas where you shouldn't be drawn into when the ball's dropped in and for their third man run, then Pope's exposed at that point. So I've seen it from a different perspective. A lot of people were saying it's Pope's fault and this and that. Yeah, he might have been in a poor position, but I think Jamal Lascelles should have done a lot better with their first. And I think Tonali should have got a little bit closer to the lad who scored. Kudos. He didn't even dangle a leg out. But again, all in all, it's a good performance. Like I said, we'll take a point away from home in the Premier League. So yeah, I'm happy, like a pig in shit. You know what I mean? So I'm happy.
Yeah, well, it's point to point. We mustn't grumble. George, we've spoken about it already. You were on the professionals, but anything else to add to what you said? I mean, it's a good point, wasn't it?
At the end of the day, it is, but there's still a bit of me that says it should have been 3. And that ball that hit the inside of the post from Isak, well, 99 times out of 100, that's going to go in, isn't it? Even off the post, but it didn't. So there's all of that. The big positives are that they played well. They recovered off getting a goal down, which is always a good thing to be able to do. And the people who are grinding it out for, if you like, Sean Longstaff, Bruno, Tonali for me, all did their bit during the game, and that's important. Kev's analysis, I would concur with. Pope, he was no man's land, but he was in no man's land largely because of what Jamal Lascelles didn't do, as much as anything. But But by and large, yes, you go to London and get a point. The days were when we used to go to London and be lucky to get a train home, never mind get a point or two or three. So it's quite nice that we managed to do that. Yeah, bring it on. Let's have some more. Congratulate West Ham on how cleverly they've used the Rice money, I must say. They've obviously used it well, and the people that have come in have been drilled by Moyes to fill the hole, as it were, and they've done it very well. So, but a good game, good point at the end of the day.
Mitch, your take?
I'll take you back to where you started, Steve, and I'd actually say that for us, for once, the international breaks come at a decent time.
Okay.
A relentless run of fixtures, which has stretched the squad to the max. We've had injuries, suspension. Everybody's given their all. And thankfully, because we haven't had too many international call-ups, it's a time to get together, reflect, and regroup and rest a little bit. So for me, for once, I think it's actually worked in my favour. I was a little annoyed after the game, but I think in retrospect, after that relentless run of fixtures, that's a good point away at West Ham. And I can't be too unhappy with it. I think Pope was actually unlucky with the first goal. I think if the striker takes a better touch, Pope's closing him down. It was the fact his touch was a little bit poor, and it took him wide out of Pope. I think that actually, I don't think Pope was in the wrong position had the striker touched it properly, but, ifs and ands and all that. And I think we did well to come back. We dug deep. Width of a post kept us from going 3-1 up, and that would have been game over. I agree wholeheartedly on the way they've used the Rice money. I think they've strengthened very, very well on the back of that, and look a better team for it. And so, and give them some credit where it's due. Also in a week where they went on the longest unbeaten run in Europe for an English team, apparently. These things aren't insignificant. I know we say, it's in that league or it's in this league. They've still got to do it. It's not something you can take away from them. I think I agree with Craig on the ref. I think the ref was poor. I think he almost made it up as he went along. Sometimes he certainly wasn't consistent. Mind, if he had been consistent, I think Bruno would have been off. So we're here again. Works against you, works for you. But that's the problem with a referee who's inconsistent. If he's inconsistent, it's Forrest Gump's box of chocolates time. You don't know what you're getting. And every decision could be random. And I think in a weekend where again we've been talking about referees and looking at what went on with the Mackems and Borough and somebody getting sent off by a referee who had sent someone off previously for aggressively running towards them. Whereas there's an onus on the players to be aware about who's reffing you and what idiosyncrasies they might have. We need to be removing these sort of randomness, these random decisions out of the game. We need to see consistency applied fairly across each game by each official. And I think we're a long way from that, with or without VAR. And that's frustrating too. But for me, like I say, I think the breaks come at a good time. I think everybody will get together. We'll come back out of it refreshed, regrouped, and we'll go again.
Okay, Stu, your take on the Desmond at the weekend?
Well, I'll swing to the defence of Jamal Lascelles, surprisingly enough. Was he culpable of a marking error? Yes, but who was the one that was meant to be marking Paqueta for the pass initially? He wasn't responsible for Pope going AWOL. He wasn't responsible for the 6-yard line being vacated for a West Ham player to have no one near him to tap the ball in the empty net. So, considering all of that, I think I should demand a replay, and that's what we should do.
Classic.
I agree with whatever else is said. The money that they spent for the Declan Rice money, that's without even money they generated in Europe, plus the TV money and the normal money they spend anyway. If you look, they've got James Ward-Prowse and Ellison Alvarez and change for Declan Rice. And I think it's what Steve Hasty said. They look a lot more solid as a team rather than a one-man band. And sometimes when the main person goes, other people do step up to the plate, and it seems that's what they've done. So they are a decent team. Following on with what Al statement there, that they've been together for a while now, so they have grown. And the manager knows the time of day. He's never going to win any beauty contests or attractive football contests, but he knows how to get results. So, as I mentioned, a good friend of ours, Les, was here last week, and he's a big West Ham fan. And I have a bet with him every game we play West Ham. So when the first goal went in, straight away, he sent us a message because he flew back to Dubai that morning. And my reply to him was very swift. You went early with the gloating, young man, haven't you? And I was right, because I get the draw. So if anyone should be annoyed, it shouldn't be Les, it should be me, because as you all know, I was on the 3-1. And when Isaac rounded the keeper, there's only one outcome, isn't there? And just talking about a couple of millimetres what other side of the post, and with 3-1, and that would have been game over. And that's the fine margins we discuss. But going after the exhilaration, as mentioned, of Wednesday night, probably one of the best nights in living memory for Newcastle on Tyne side. It's easy to say, right, it's mental fatigue, or we go again, we do this. But they are professional footballers, but they are human beings as well, and it is difficult. You know, if you've achieved something really good in your life, is to then go put the same effort the next day, or the next game, or the next whatever it is. It does become more difficult. But I think taking the points where we are, how many points we're behind, we've got a kind run of fixtures after what have been horrendous. I think we're bang on for pushing on to the Champions League qualification for next year. I don't think I've seen anything that really scares us. If you look at the Liverpool game, we really should have beat them. Man City, let's say we take a loss there. The only team that's really embarrassed us was Brighton, and they just played through our lines. The cut our midfield out, went directly through them. But we tend to beat them at home. They'll beat us at their place. But if you're looking at the revival, if you listen to Talk Sport, as I do some mornings when I'm out walking, they're banging on about the Chelsea revival now, because they won at Burnley. They won comprehensively at Burnley the weekend. So now there's a big push for Chelsea to be regaining their rightful spot in the Champions League. And I thought you had to qualify to get it, but never mind. But if anyone has the time or even the desire, if you check Chelsea's next 8 fixtures, they're against 8 teams that finished in the top 9 last season. So when they come out at the end of that in December, let's see where they are and where we are, because for sure we'll be flying above them. And it's not just us that have got twice a week football. West Ham have, Brighton have, Aston Villa have, Man United have, Liverpool have, Man City have, Arsenal have. So we're all in the same boat, and our squad is stronger than it was last year. So I'm still extremely confident that we'll kick on. The players will be rested that need to be rested, and they'll be rotated as and when. And I still think we'll qualify for the Champions League. So back to the beginning, I'm happy with the Desmond, although the 3-1 would have been much more happier for personal reasons.
Okay, Craig Lee, good evening. Says, question for the panel. As we all know, we've had multiple injuries so far. We were a bit thin in certain positions. If we're only strengthening one position, which is it? Player 2, if you've one in mind. So, yeah, January's going to be here before we know it. And, you know, we've had discussions about centre forwards, centre halves, and the players are rising to the occasion. Jamal Lascelles is one that's just been pointed out by Stewie. Mentioned him there before, but we've got strength and depth, but we are going to add. So Al Walid, Osherman's available again. Sounds like he's they're trying to link him to Arsenal. Is he going to come to the Premier League maybe next year for Newcastle, do you think? Or is there another player that you've got in mind? Is there another position you've got in mind?
Well, still, obviously, we need a playmaker. We need this number 10 position who can help when everything is not going well for Newcastle. So I still believe that we need this playmaker. Same position we thought of through with Madison and Szoboszlai in the summer transfer window. So hopefully we got that player who pleased Eddie Howe, so we can use him in the team properly.
Okay, Steve, what's your take on strengthening? It's starting now. Barry's probably compiling his list already. Who does the fans forum for how many players we've been linked with? Yeah, you're on mute, Steve. Now we can't see you.
I pressed the wrong button there. Striker, that's what we need. Need a striker. Who's available? Probably nobody. If you look at the way that the clubs are at the moment, nobody's ever going to say that any of their strikers are available. You talk to agents, everybody's available. You mentioned Osimhen. It's an interesting situation that's occurred with Osimhen over at the start of the season. Napoli seem to be in a bit of disarray. Vlahovic for me at Juve still an absolutely superb striker. That excites me every time I see him play. But you know what? We just need that attacking cover. We've got two players there playing up front in Wilson and Isak that we're having to wrap in cotton wool, and that will catch us out as the season goes on if we're not careful. So definitely a striker for me. I'm not worried about a playmaker. I think we've got enough in midfield when they're on form. I think Tonali will come good. I don't think he's done that bad actually. To be perfectly honest, I'm saying come good. But in Bruno, you've got a baller there when he plays that little bit further up. So he's just as good as any Maddison or anyone like that when he's on song and when he put his foot on the ball and he's playing in front like he did on Sunday. So I'm not worried. Striker though.
Okay, striker for you, Kev.
Same. I'll go for an attacking option. Something different to an Isak and or Wilson. Can't put my finger on a certain player. Again, like Steve just said, who's available at, again, a particular price in the market, which is always inflated at that time of year. Do we go for a loan, for a younger typeset player, or do we just go with what we got? I think there's a bit of a concern around, in my opinion, Wilson's injury, because it seemed to be, yes, he played a little bit on Sunday, sorry. But I think from what I'm hearing, Eddie Howe was reluctant to even put him in there but Isak wanted to come out. So, you know, you can't, it's the devil's in the detail, but at the same time, I think a forward player would be beneficial to us, a good, with a bit of pace, bit of physicality. But if we're talking this, next year into the summer, I'll just put a little punt on Evan Ferguson from Brighton. I think he's the type of forward that could quite easily replace Callum Wilson. Not that we want to replace him, but in terms of times of need, or as a young up and coming English centre forward, or wherever he's from, or British, I think he'll be the type of player that we'll be looking at.
Okay, we can't recall Minty. David McLeod was asking, can we recall him from his loan? It's a season-long loan, mate. So no is the answer to that. Mitch, you know, we go through this every so often. People asking who and where. Yeah, any more thoughts on this?
Tend to agree. For me, we can't carry on wrapping up Isak and Wilson in cotton wool. We need someone to take the pressure off that. I think if you're going to name names, if you want a young striker, I think absolutely Ferguson's a name that's got to be in the frame. The Osimhen situation is very interesting. What's happening at that club is shows what the biggest problem in Italian football is for me. And when he was brought back into the fold, the fact he wouldn't shake some of his teammates' hands tells me that's a dressing room that is riddled with the same problem. And therefore, that might be, it's a cynical way to look at it, but he may be wanting a way out of that dressing room, and we may be able to offer that way out. We're one of the few clubs that can. This is the beauty. We've said this before. We can be a problem solver for someone. You having problems with your FFP? Come and have a chat. You got a striker that wants you want desperately out. Yeah, we might be able to help you with that. That kind of thing. So for me, not just good, that would be sensational. And every time I think they're not going to do something sensational to do, so I wouldn't rule anything out. That's for sure. I think we also have to look at, like, again, quite rightly, everybody said, about succession planning and who do we bring in with an eye for the future. And I'm sure that's all in the list.
Okay, George, what about you?
Oh, I think I said the other night, a striker from the off, and Kevin's shout about Ferguson's a good one, wherever he comes from, Stu. But Osimhen, if we're looking for somebody who's really international top class, it's got to be Osimhen. It's the only one. He's the only one on the scene at the moment. I agree with Neil. If there's that kind of acrimony in the dressing room, never mind on the terraces, that he wouldn't shake his mate's hand. There could be a way of getting him out, but that's where I would be anyway. A centre forward, and if you want an old-fashioned centre forward, it would be young Ferguson, because he's got all the attributes of a young Shearer when I watch him, and he could be fantastic for us. Could be fantastic.
Okay, Stu, what's your thoughts?
I think we've missed the boat on Ferguson. I think his price would be too highly inflated now. And yeah, as good as he is, I don't think he'd suit our style of play. I like Spenny's shout there of Tomori centre-back. And young, fast, strong, athletic. He ticks a lot of the boxes. But at the moment, I think to me, if they're going to get someone in, they'll get someone up front. Osimhen's the dream choice, isn't he? But it's not like me to be negative. I think for someone like him, he'd be more of a summer signing, rather than, where they can blend him in pre-season and everything else, rather than thrust in. If it was me, I would go back to someone that you remember how to spell, Steve, in the summer.
Suppose by.
No, Barrichello.
Who?
Barrichello, the right winger, the Georgian.
Oh, yes.
And he's got pace. He's got a finish. He's got a pass. He can cross the ball. And for me, I think, as well as Miggy's done in the last few weeks, I still think that's an area we could look to upgrade on, or at least challenge. If we're going to get better, we do have to start looking at things like this. And I think someone like him coming in would be a benefit to us. So I'm comfortable with whoever they get, because I'm sure we can throw as many names as we want on the screen here. But they'll be doing all the studies. They'll probably watched everyone 10 times. They'll find out what time they go to bed, what they have for their breakfast, what TV programs they watch. So that they'll do more than they do diligence. And I'm sure they've already got lists, as Mitch said there, not just for this window, but for the next one and the one after that and the one after that. So we can't grumble with what we've got, but there's nothing wrong with wanting more and wanting to improve. And for sure, that's one thing that this club's going to do, is continuously improve. And I'll stress on the field.
Yeah, and another name I would throw in, Steve, would be Martinez at Inter. Lautaro Martinez, the striker. Can play as a striker, can play off a striker, gets goals. He's got a bit of aggression in him. He's great movement, and he would be another striker that I would be considering. Go over to the blue side of Inter and of Milan and pick him up from Inter.
There's a lad at Real Madrid called Joselu or something banging some goals in
David McLeod, you're right, mate. He says Dan Ashworth might have already identified somebody else as we speak. He will have done, mate, and now he'll be looking at summer's transfer window. That's how organised we are now under this ownership. Chris O'Neill says Ferguson's totally overrated, all because of his fluky hat-trick against us. Halfway through the show, time for the ads. A big thanks to all our sponsors. Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks to Mr. Vicky Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find out more about them from their website, mrvickies.co.uk, or by calling 01768 210 102. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the video side of things. And thanks to United Group Travel, UK coach holiday firm based in Morpeth. There's no strangers on their tours, just people you haven't met yet. They're now taking bookings for 2024. You can call 01670 632 460, 0791 666 4174 or 07957 141 654, or go to the website unitedgrouptravel.com. Please subscribe to the channel. Hit the subscribe button underneath the video today. We still do 7 shows a week. Hit the thumb up under the video to like it. It does us a big favour. Click share to share to your other social media and let people know about NUFC matters. We're also a podcast. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. If you want to help the show financially, you can take out a £25 one-off membership. You get a scarf, a pen, a cup, and a membership card. How do you get it? Go to nufcmatters.com, look for membership. If you've got a smartphone, then put your smartphone over the QR code and it will take you straight to that section on the website. We also support the food bank on this channel. You can donate to the food bank today by going to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk. We do support events on this channel as well. If you've got an event, please send it in and we'll promote it. The Tyne Theatre and Opera House are doing a Keegan, Beardsley and Waddle event, the Class of 84, 25th of January 2024. Book now by calling 0844 249 1000. And the Tyneside Irish Centre, they're doing an event with Frank Clark and John Gibson on Thursday, December the 7th. You can get tickets from nufcmatters.com and they are priced at £15. There's also some tickets available on Groupon. Don't forget, you can catch me 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, with Rye, Dave and Daz on the Northeast Footy Brekkie Show, 7 till 9, and you can catch us on the Red, the Toon and the Cat and on Toon Radio's website. WhatsApp us on the day 0330 043 2002, the perfect way to start your day. Okay, it is time for Ask George. Alan Little, there's a question for George. Did Pele ever play for Santos at St James's Park? And if so, were you there, George?
No, I wasn't, and he did, yeah. I wasn't there, though.
Okay, Sam, good evening. Says, question for George. Would a pair of the old-style boots last him a full season?
Yeah, and it's sometimes more than one season. The problem is, of course, is that it was all the ironmongery on the bottom with the studs. I mean, I've got tram lines across both my thighs where somebody took the studs across my thigh and the nails were coming out of the leather studs. You know, that's how bad it was. But yeah, you'd get a couple of seasons out of a good pair of boots. Style of doing it at Newcastle was fairly harsh. That's why I've got knackered feet now. They used to buy you boots which were at least one size, if not 2 sizes too small. And you went up and sat in the boot room at St James's Park with your boots on and your socks on in a bucket of hot water for about a week and a half till your feet fitted the boot. Mine, when they fitted, they were like slippers, but yeah, it knackered your feet. I mean, you just didn't have a look at mine. So yes, they would last a season easily. What did happen was, and it used to happen in the boot room at Newcastle, there was a guy there just spent his whole time putting new studs in for the everybody from the first team down to the juniors. If you were on a signed form, they replaced the studs in your boots, that sort of thing for you. So there was a couple of guys there just did nothing else, and there was piles of knacky nails and leather line in the corner. So yes, the short answer, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the offer of showing your feet, George, but I think there'll be a report going in Newcastle United about the channel if we start doing that. There are other channels available for people who like to see people's feet, though. Stu told us. Tom Dixon says, ask George, what's the worst football game you've ever watched?
Oh, jeez.
Anything involving Sunderland?
Steve Bruce.
Well, you're laughing. I was going to say Sunderland, and he was with us. Sunderland against Northampton, I think, Neil. Yeah, Sunderland against Northampton. It was
at the League Cup game.
Yes, it was absolutely atrocious. I mean, it was bad because it was 0-0. But I've seen 0-0s that were quite exciting. this one, they never, either team didn't seem to cross the halfway line. And the Cabadol, when they did the man of the match thing in the board of directors room afterwards, a certain young man picked the Northampton player as the man of the match. And that went down like a lead balloon. But that there, Northampton versus Sunderland, I think it was a League Cup game. It was dreadful. Absolutely dreadful.
Okay, Spenny says, George, have you ever done the Dan Burn dance? And if so, can you show us? If not, can Mitch do it?
Oh, of course I can do it. Oh, for God's sake, man. How we? Are you Geordies or what? How we? For God's sake. Yeah, bloody hell. Yeah, there's not much room to do it here, but...
Very good, that, George. Very good. Very good.
How we,
Excellent.
man?
Excellent stuff. Kenneth Watson says, George, was Jackie Sinclair a good player? He played for my hometown club. Yeah,
Jackie Sinclair was a very dangerous little winger and a nice guy as well. I had the fortune to meet Jackie. Yes, a lovely, good player. He fitted into the team straight away, and he was speedy, tricky, and had a good shot in either foot. Not a winger who had to have a right foot or a left foot. He could use both.
Yep, people very pleased with your dance, and George so proud of those moves. What a dancer! Well done, George, says Don. Ian Brownlee says, well played, George. Gannon, George, says Spenny. Tom Dixon says, well done as well. Last question.
I can hear my Marjorie laughing her bloody socks off.
Last question for George is, who was the best Geordie born player that we missed out on, do you think?
Oh, that's a good one. There's so many of them, isn't there? Oh, I think, I'll be honest, we should have had Brian Robson. Brian Robson should have been a Newcastle player. That was a bit of stupidity on the part of the scouting staff at the time. But in terms of people that reached the heights, and when he was playing, Brian did, he should have been a Newcastle player. There's others as well. Well, the Carrick boys, both the Carrick boys should have been as well, but that's the way the scouting was at the time. But Brian Robson come to mind straight away.
Colin Bell, Bobby Charlton, Robert Carrick. There's some good suggestions there from other people, but that is Ask George for this week.
Yeah.
Ian Toon Traders comparing you to Bez from the Happy Mondays, George, with that.
The original Geordie.
The original Geordie dancer, aye, exactly. A couple of questions for Steve Hasty. Alan Little said, does Steve Hasty ever go and watch Heat and Stan? Mr. Rizzy from our old school and Mickey Edmondson are regulars. Do you go and watch Heat and Stan, Steve?
I don't, actually. My two Pauls, they go. And I know Mark quite well, Mark Reesey. Runs the ice cream down in the Dean and various other ice cream emporiums in the past, and obviously everybody knows Mick. But no, I don't get over. I should really go, but every time I've been going to go when it's been a non-league day, they've been playing away. Typical.
And another question by Steve: does the international break impact the food bank a lot? Says Les.
Yeah, of course it does. In terms of cash flow, it does. Obviously, we've done really well recently in terms of having sort of 3 games in 8-10 days. What we are struggling with is volunteers. There's a couple of volunteers haven't been too good. I've missed a few of the games myself recently through work commitments. But we're always looking for volunteers. And the one thing that we always say is that we're grateful for every single penny that comes in. Every penny counts is a phrase that's used many, many times. But when it comes to the food bank, it certainly does count. And the generosity of Newcastle fans is second to none, quite frankly. And it's great to see away fans coming along and dropping some money in the buckets as well, or just calling in. We have a good rapport now, and there's quite a little network of national food bank, football food banks around the country and in Scotland. So, the international break does affect us, but it does catch up. There's always, it's not like we're missing a game. It's just a little gap in the proceedings, and we still get the 19 league games in. Don't worry about that.
Okay, we're going to start with another question. Chris O'Neill, he put this in the chat the other day, and I didn't get round to it. He goes, "I'm sick of people pushing Elliot Anderson because he's a local lad. but he is simply not yet good enough. Not one cross in the box. It should have been Isak on the wing, Wilson up front. Okay, Elliot Anderson. I'll give you my opinion, Chris. I genuinely think the kid is good enough. I think he's going to improve vastly playing with better players around him. And I genuinely think that give him time, he would be one of the best players to come through our academy for many a year. You've got to give the kid time. He's used him sparingly last season, Eddie Howe. This season, he's including him a lot more because he needs to, because our squad, has been tested, it has to be said. And I think he suffers because he's versatile. I think that's the problem. I think he can play in more than one position. He's a bit of a Steve Watson. He can play left back. He can play centre half. He can play centre forward. He'd do it for you as well because he's black and white. He'd run through a brick wall. That's my view. Go on, Stu. You were quick to jump in there, so I'll go the other way around the board because you clearly want to say something. I don't want you to miss your opportunity. So you give us your view.
Just exactly what you said there, Steve. It was I think he might suffer from Steve Watsonitis, where he's more than willing to play in any position. He's capable of playing in any position, and the way the squad is now, he's not going to nail down a regular position. Remember, he has been playing midfield and on the left wing. Now, considering that Wilson was only going to be played in an emergency, there was no way he was going to start Isak on the left. Now, going forward, if everyone's dream team is right, you could have Isak play on the left permanently and Osman up front. But I think Isak's better up the middle. But regarding Anderson, he's probably the biggest talent we've had in the last 10, 15 years coming through our ranks. And that weigh on his shoulders heavily as well. And then you've got young Lewis Bailey, who could surpass a lot, probably be the best homegrown talent that's come through since Gascoigne. So we have to be careful with them. We've got to put them in, give them a run of games, take them out, rest them, etc., etc. And if he's good enough, he'll make it in that first team. But then on the flip side of that, Steve, we've just had a round of questions here where everyone's naming the star players they want to bring in. So where do the young come through? It's getting the right balance. And I think if he features in 30 plus games this season, it's a big step up from what he did last season. And then the onus is on him to produce consistently well in position. And he's young, he's going to try too hard. He's just got used to one position and moved him to another. And I thought he did well. Yeah, he didn't get many crosses in. Not many crosses come in from the other winger. If he mentioned Almiron, most of the crosses that came into the box against West Ham were from Trippier, thankfully, because they were quality as well. So it's easy to look at and say and isolate one thing. He wasn't crossing, but he covered a lot of ground. He blocked. He pressed well. He did a lot of blocking. He did a lot of tracking back, etc., etc. So for what we've seen, if you look at what he did in the summer, people can say it's only pre-season, but he's still playing against Premier League players. I think the lad deserves his chance, and he's earned his chance, and he's had more good games than bad games this season. And wholeheartedly agree with you, he will only get better, and he's going to be a great asset for this club. And if it gets to the stage where he's not going to be playing regularly, we'll command a high fee for him, which will help us as well, and also help him.
Okay, George, your take on Elliot Anderson? I think he's improving, George.
Well, he is, and he's a class act for me because he's one of these rare players with two good feet, not just one good foot. And the fact that he's versatile, I think we used to call them utility players in my day. It's against him in some ways because it means he never gets really settled, and that's what he desperately needs is a settled run in a settled position, knowing the job he's got to do instead of being pushed around all over the place just to help the team out. That's good for the team, but isn't much good for Elliot Anderson. No, I think he's the star of the future, and I'll be very, very disappointed if this time next year we're not raving about Elliot Anderson as the next Geordie superstar, to be perfectly honest. And that's how good I think he is. And having, known his grandfather, he's got the feet of his grandfather. He's got two very, very delicate, very fast feet, which are unusual in this day and age. So, yeah, Elliot's all right for me, I'm afraid.
More feet crack there from George. And there's a T-shirt in this. Different type of feet, somebody else's. Mitch?
Difficult to disagree. I mean, he was the standout performer in pre-season.
Yeah.
Come back super fit and looked it. I think the key word I've seen used on the screen there is trust. If Eddie didn't trust him, he'd be nowhere near the first team. Simple as that. And another thing that Eddie Howe talks about with all the signings he's made over the summer was versatility. He said that about Tino. He said that about Young Hall. That, you know, he wants players with versatility to be able to move around, to help the squad, you know, go through the run of games we have. We've done that because we've got players who can fill in roles and we can chop and change and carry 4 injuries and a suspension into the West Ham game and still come away with a creditable point. I think I don't think he's thrust into the team because he's a local lad. I think he's thrust into the team because Eddie Howe thinks he's good enough. It's as simple as that. And I think if he trusts him, I trust him. And really, you're right in that for a young man, ideally you would have stability. You would have the luxury to say, when we play you, you are going to play in this position or this position, and that's it. Unfortunately, the nature is we've had to just juggle it around a bit.
Okay, Kev, your take on Anderson's development?
Well, he's only 20. I mean, he's still developing as a young player, and from my end, and yes, he's versatile, but he's got to mature in those positions as he gets older and gets more game time. Yes, he might get thrust into the left-sided midfield of a 3, then he might get put on as a left winger. So he's got to learn those positions and those movements and the responsibilities that come across with all of that. So again, he's only 20 years old. Give him a chance, you know, let him get some, like we've all said, get him game under his belt. And I think, like what just Mitch said about the trust element of Eddie Howe, what he sees every day in training, he comes back one of the fittest within the whole squad as a 20-year-old. And he doesn't look 20. He looks 25, 26, 7, you know, like the mass, the muscle mass that he's put on over the summer. He looks like a seasoned pro, but again, I think his youth and his versatility are probably hurting him at this point based on the fact that, not that they don't know where to play him, but again, it's like a stopgap at this point in terms of the injuries, the suspensions type of nature. So I think just give him some time. Just let him get his feet under the table a little bit and let him express himself as a young 20-year-old Geordie playing in the first team. It's got nothing to do with where he's from. He could be from over here. He could be from Saudi Arabia. He could be from anywhere. He's got to get games and minutes. And the understanding of, from a tactical nature of how we play. So yeah, just keep doing what you're doing, Elliot. You've got nothing to worry about. I'm not going to pull you down, and if those that do need to give the head a wobble.
Okay, yeah. Steve, your take on young Elliot?
He's a Geordie lad, so he's there to have a pop at, isn't he? That's the problem. That's one of the problems he's going to always have. We've seen it time and time again. Certain elements of the fan base love the idea of having somebody on the pitch that they can have a pop at, and unfortunately, it often tends to be a young lad who somebody tells them is going to be an absolute superstar, and then has one poor game and he's out on a limb. You know, I find it quite disappointing. I look at Elliot Anderson, and then I look at Cole Palmer at Chelsea. I think there's a lad that's 1 year older who's just left Man City for first team football at Chelsea, 40 million quid. Is that a bargain for Chelsea, or is it a loss for Man City? And I think it's a loss for Man City, and I think the same thing would happen if we got rid of an Elliot Anderson for 40 million quid. I think we'd live to regret it. Elliot Anderson is a player, because he's only 20, he's a player for the future. There's plenty of time. We've got plenty of time for him to mature into a top-class footballer. His versatility, yes, that can hold him back slightly. But everything that's already been said, and I agree entirely with the very first comment that came up from Barry Hogan, that he's a star in the making. Let's just not put too much pressure on our young footballers. You know, when he gets a goal, I think he'll suddenly get 2 or 3. I think his problem is sometimes that if there is a problem, It's that he hasn't quite got a position to play in yet. And I think once Eddie decides that he's going to be either a central midfielder, he's going to be a number 10, or he's going to be a play on the left side of a 3 or the right side of a 3. Once he finds that spot, he'll make that spot his own, and then it's for everybody else to kick him out.
The answer is yes, George. We've discussed this on the show a few times now, but planning permission, obviously, will need to be gained, but they're looking at things at the moment. They are going to extend, and I think by Euro 2028, the extension will have already been done. So the answer is yes to that. And obviously, news breaking tonight as well that the Stack, which is going to be the fan zone, could hit licensing problems. There's been a few objections from the police. They're not very happy about certain things. So that isn't as clear cut as everyone thought it was maybe a few weeks ago. So we'll watch that with interest. And Michael, it was a question that's been asked a couple of times on the panel about Elliot. So we like to discuss things on here. We like to make sure that everybody's everyone's opinion is taken into consideration. I do like the idea of Mark's question, which I'll come to in a second. I just want to read this out from Oliver B. We're not going to discuss this, but he said the box office have said 4,000 tickets are allocated for members each home game. 30,000 people apply for the games, and there's only 4,000 tickets allocated. Members need to know this. More transparency needed on how it's drawn. Oliver, give us a little bit more on that if you can for another show. But if that's a discussion that you've had with the box office, I'd be very interested to know if that is the amount of tickets that are allocated for members. It would be nice to have some more transparency on that. Again, I'm urging the Supporters Trust and the Supporters Club to try and get the information from the club, because it would be nice to know. And if we could find out what that was, a lot of people would probably would be going down the same road as a few people in the chat, not renewing the membership. Let's finish on football though. Let's finish on a positive. Mark Byers says, I don't think the assist from Trippier for Isak's second has been talked about enough. A difficult and absolutely class touch on the volley. It was a great little ball, that wasn't it, Al Walid, from Trippier, who's finding some great form at the moment.
I can't add any more about Trippier. He's a great player, and he's our ambassador in English team. We're really proud and really happy that we still have him, and he's still playing the best. He's in the best level at football, and usually the sad thing is usually when this level of the player, usually it's like the end before it ends for the player. But I'm still waiting the trophy, so he really gets a great achievement before he's retired.
Steve, it was a sublime pass, wasn't it?
Oh, perfect cushion pass. You'd never ever see better than that. That was perfection, and it was a beautiful pass in as well. That little dink ball landed absolutely perfect for him. To see the run, for to pop it over the top like it did. Not that much pace, beautiful flight, nice and high, dropped perfectly for Trippier. But then to have the confidence to just cushion that ball back across for Isak, who then again did exactly the same, just opened his foot up and just slotted it. Could have attempted to hit it with his head, could have tried to blast it, but a sublime finish. So delicate. Great football to watch, Steve. Absolutely brilliant. That's why you watch football, to see players pull off little tricks like that, little bits of interplay, the sort of thing that you're not going to see every week. But when you do see it, you go, wow. That's what excites you about football. And Newcastle United are doing it in spades at the moment.
Kev, you can't teach things like that, really. It's just, it comes with class.
And that's the word, it's world class. To see the overlapping run, essentially, in and around the 18-yard box, overloaded it on the left side, he's free, exploited the space, and like Steve said, it was just a wonderfully executed goal all the way around. And he's got to tap in, but the audacity just to play it on the volley, one touch with the inside of your foot, he just makes things look easy in the attacking third from an assist. And it's just his intelligence and his game management and how he plays the game. He sees things differently. from a full-back position, and I've just looked it up real quick. He's joint top with James Maddison and Pedro Neto in assists this season, and he's played a few more minutes than others, or a few less. But for a fullback to be having 5 assists across this course of the season already, long may continue, because I think somebody said in a previous show, he's one of the best fullbacks that I've ever seen playing in Newcastle United shirt. And again, long may continue. And yeah, we've got a bargain at 12 million for that.
Definitely did. Mitch, great. It's been some great, games by Trippier. He just seems to be getting better and better.
That was one of those moments where people who know football will appreciate what a beautifully crafted pass that was. It's like watching Sever Ballesteros dropping a ball within 2 foot of the pin in his pump, and people who don't necessarily know football, I don't know, maybe he's like a tattooed loud-mouthed Chelsea fan, will tell you how easy it is. And you'll go like, okay, let's get a ball and go and try it. Let's see how many you shank over the bar, how many you put into the stands, how many you put here, there, and everywhere. Because it ain't that easy, mate. It looks easy because Trippier made it look easy. And that, for me, was the beauty of it. That's the sublime part of it. To make something that difficult look so simple and put it right on the toe end of the striker. It just says, right, smash the net. Beautiful. And you're right, he's getting better and better. He's not fading at all. He seems to be growing into the sort of almost the leadership role day by day, bearing the standard that everybody else looks up to in terms of attitude, fitness, contribution, going forward and coming back. And so, there's a lot. We've been talking about young players here. What an amazing figurehead in the dressing room for our young players to look at and see that probably every day in training. And if you aspire to have the kind of career he's had, go and spend more time with him. And I bet if the young ones went up to him and said, can we do a bit extra after training, he'd do anything for them. He seems that kind of character. And what an absolute blessing of a signing and an intelligent signing he's been.
George, 12 million. Best 12 million we've ever spent, says Ian.
Absolutely. And Kevin's absolutely right. We've never had a better fullback. The other thing I follow on from what Neil's saying, if young people watch him, that some of that is natural ball skill, but the final bit of it is honed on the training pitch. I suspect he's done all of that hours after everybody else has gone home. He's the sort of lad I suspect who stays back an hour, a couple of hours on his own, just doing that kind of thing because it came so naturally. It didn't even hesitate. He didn't even have to look. Now that really is born of somebody who's taken that skill to the highest level by practicing it and practice it till it gets better. And he deserves every praise for it. Like, I've got to say, you're right. 12 million, my goodness, what a buy he's turned out to be. It also illustrates to me where I go on about on here many times is I get sick to death of commentators making an excuse for players who cost millions. He's only got a right foot. He's only got a left foot. My godfathers. I can hear the coaches I used to be with at St. James's tearing their bloody hair out. The number of times I've stood in the old car park next to a seasoned professional like Bobby Mitchell, who was the famous, bashing the ball against the side of the gym, hitting circles that had been painted on. And if he missed because he was a professional, he got the paints in when they went to the pub. I mean, that's, and Bobby had an awful right foot, but he's to work harder trying not to make it awful. It worries me that they don't do that now. Trippier is a prime example of somebody who's worked after hours to get that skill.
Okay, and finally, Stu, your view on somebody who, is obviously going to play for England this week. You can't nab him. Carver is trying to nab Harvey Barnes, Tino Livramento, Elliot Anderson now, but Trippier is a fully fledged member of the England national team. What's your view of him in black and white, though?
Well, first of all, he's crossed, as both Kevin and Mitch said, unless you've played football, you don't realise how difficult that is. Just the way he cushioned it at the right pace, the right. It made it so easy for Isaac, and it's so difficult to do. He's probably the best fullback we've had since Mr. G. Mitchell in the late 50s. I would say.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
Apparently so. But no, you can see it's probably just on. I know myself and Mitch have had this conversation, so it'll probably echo something what he's just said. If you're watching Trippier, he seems to relish in his leadership role, and he does lead by example. And he's age-wise means he's mature as a footballer, but he's very mature as a person. And he's playing now like he appreciates what he has, what time he's got left, and he's getting the very, very best out of his talent. So it's a perfect example to the younger ones that are in the squad, and the not so younger ones. You know, the ones who believe they're already established, think, well, hang on, this guy's the captain, and he's cleaning his own boots, and he's there first. This is what it takes. This is what I need to do to maintain the standard he's set at that age. So it goes back to the old adage: the harder you work, the luckier you get. And when you're born with natural talent like that, and you put the hard work together, you get very lucky. And we as supporters, we're very lucky to have him. And long may it continue.
Yeah. Great show, as always, chaps. Great to have you all on and get an international flavour as well from Kevin, from Al Walid. I'm back tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock with Super Mac and Gibbo, and then the Three Amigos will be 5 o'clock on Friday. But for now, good night from me, good night from the lads. Take care.
Good night, everybody.
Night, lads.